Hey, hello. It is Josh Bow for Pod Maverick and MavsMoneyball.com. As you can tell, it is just me. Kirk, our fearless leader, is having some technical issues with his audio equipment, and he's trying to solve it right now. But I told it is a preseason game, so let's not let's not go too nuts. So I'm gonna record. It's already almost 10 o'clock local time here in Texas. The Mavericks' second preseason game was just wrapped up about a half hour or so ago. And hey, it's preseason. We're working through all the kinks. I've been out of commission for a while, so let's just let Kirk have the night off while he figures out his audio issues, and we'll be ready for the regular season because that's when it counts, right? So Mavericks lose their second preseason game to the Utah Jazz 107-102. It was not the most compelling game. I thought the first game against Memphis was more interesting and maybe a little bit more entertaining. This game, Mavericks were a bit more sloppy. 17 turnovers. Um, Defensively, did not look as sharp as maybe they could have. Jazz got a lot of points in the paint and scored at the rim with some dunks and layups and dribble penetration. But there was obviously some things. I mean, it's preseason and there's no Luca Doncic, no PJ Washington, but the Mavericks did play the most starters they've played so far in the preseason. They played Kyrie Irving. They played Klay Thompson. So Klay Thompson made his debut in a Mavericks uniform for the first time. And they looked pretty good. Kyrie had a pretty decent game, 12 points on 11 shots, 6 of 11 from the field. Didn't make any of his threes, but he was 6 of 7. On his 2-pointers, looking like the Kyrie from last season. And it was good to see Kyrie, if only because he did have that broken hand in the summer, so did not really see any ill effects of that. So Kyrie Irving looked good. And then, of course, Klay Thompson's debut. He started off, I think he missed his first couple shots, which is whatever. I think it was more just seeing him on the floor, seeing how he moved, and seeing how he was used. That was probably the most exciting part of this preseason game to me. Klay's defense was pretty admirable for a preseason game. I know it's the Jazz and I know it's preseason, but he was moving around pretty well. Our man Panda Hank on YouTube put together a little compilation. I don't know if it's on YouTube, but he put a little compilation of Klay's defense on Twitter, and I thought it looked pretty good. What really excited me was something that, this isn't really a surprise with Klay's offense, as other very smart basketball people have noted this before the preseason started, before training camp started, was the way Klay's passing could be utilized in this Mavericks offense with these Mavericks rim running bigs and Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. Because Klay Thompson has a proclivity of, when he comes off those screens, those off-ball screens, those pin downs, curling towards the nail or curling towards and above the break three. He loves that little drop bounce pass to the big that's screening for him. And he did that a couple times tonight. He did one where he came off a screen and kind of gave the hockey assist, and Lively got a dunk. And generally moving pretty well. The Mavericks, there was a lot of, consternation from some national media people about how the Mavericks offense would accommodate Klay Thompson and all his off-ball movement, not understanding that the Mavericks have been using Tim Hardaway Jr. in that off-ball movement shooter role for like the last 4 years. And the Mavericks can just plug Klay into all the stuff that they were doing with Tim Hardaway Jr., except now they've got, no disrespect to Tim Hardaway Jr., they've got an undoubtedly more talented player in that role. So Klay in this Mavericks offense, that never was really a concern for me. If anything, the concerns for Klay were going to be defense, and then how he would just kind of fit in the totem pole, considering how he felt a little disrespected in Golden State. And so far, so good. He's moving pretty well. And again, seeing the off-ball movement, seeing the passing that he can bring from those pin downs is going to open up a level of the Mavericks offense that they just never really had. All due respect to Tim Hardaway Jr. and the career years he had in Dallas, really the best years of his career were in Dallas. He just was not a big passer. So that's an aspect of their Mavericks offense they never had before, like someone that can not only be a movement shooter off the ball, but that make reads and passes to cutting big men, or to your big men that's setting the screen, those one-touch passes. that's exciting, and it's something the Mavericks. It's a dynamic to the Mavericks offense they never really had before. Klay had 3 assists in 18 minutes. It was fun to watch. The team was a minus 19 in his 18 minutes, but again, with Kyrie and Klay, this was their first preseason game. Kyrie broke his hand in the summer. This was just an ease in warm up game, and just seeing how the Mavericks use Klay, I think that's pretty encouraging for what they're going to be doing for the rest of the season. Outside of that, I'll be honest, there isn't that much to talk about. The Mavericks struggled defensively, and their offense was in a rut. They started Omax Prosper and Derek Lively and Spencer Dinwiddie as the other three starters. Lively looked good. Definitely not as eye popping as his performance against Memphis in the first preseason game, but he had 2 blocks, 4 points, 3 rebounds, and assists. Played a normal Derek Lively game. Just didn't really pop off the stat sheet as much as he did on Monday. Omax Prosper got the start. JC Kidd has been trying to give Prosper minutes along with the main starting rotation players. He did that last season as well. I think Prosper started the first preseason game last year because I think Kidd just wants to get a look with how Prosper looks among starters and other big minute players. And Prosper, it was a mixed bag. He's handling the ball a lot, and it's really difficult to evaluate his game in the preseason and summer league since he's been in Dallas, because I said this after the preseason game 1, he's trying stuff in the preseason and summer league that he's never going to really try in the regular season. You could tell that he's trying to work on things and try things out that he would never have an opportunity to do in a regular season game, because he's going to play such few minutes that his role, he is a 3 and D wing. That is going to be his role. Like, he is not going to be handling the ball enough to commit 3 turnovers or, miss as many shots as he's been missing, because he's not going to be taking pull-up 2s. I don't think he will in the regular season. I mean, certainly we'll see. But it's been hard to evaluate him because I kind of just want to see him in his role. Like, in the preseason and summer league, he's got this expanded role, trying new things with bigger minutes and opportunities. I kind of want to see what he looks like just being a 3 and D wing, just shooting threes off catch, and being an energy guy. And instead he's been having to handle the ball a lot, which I understand. It's preseason, you got to work on some things, but I hope when the Mavericks, with one of these final 2 preseason games, I hope they give him an opportunity to play with the starters and just kind of be the player that he's supposedly going to be in the regular season, and just maybe let him cool out on some of these ball handling opportunities, because that's really not his game. And I just like to see what he looks like just being that pure 3 and D wing. We saw glimpses of it when he got some spot minutes in the regular season last year, but haven't seen a ton of it this season. But he did get 10 rebounds. He had 10 points. His activity and his length is just noticeable. He's a big dude when he's on the floor, and you saw that with grabbing 10 rebounds. Otherwise, not much else standing out. Daniel Gafford, hilariously, 15 points in 18 minutes, led all Maverick scorers. He got up 10 shots in 18 minutes. In the third quarter, it was the Daniel Gafford show. I mean, he was just, I don't know how many dunks he had in the third quarter, but he was just putting on a dunking exhibition, whether it was being assisted by his teammates, getting offensive rebounds, running in transition. The Jazz just had no answer for him, and he just pounded the rim in the third quarter and found himself 15.7 rebounds. So a nice game for him. 3 blocks. He had a really nice block on Lauri Markkanen in the first half. Timed it really well as Lauri was going for a dunk. So you look at the Mavericks centers, they combined for 5 blocks, like just picking up from where they left off last season. I mean, you could argue that the Mavericks have pound for pound the best rim protecting duo in the NBA, just purely from guarding the rim. And Lively and Gafford certainly looked the part again so far early in the preseason. Should note that AJ Lawson played. And it's funny because if you were reading MavsMoneyball.com, the last I think we posted about AJ Lawson was that he got waived because he had a fully guaranteed contract. And I believe the Mavericks needed to waive him for CBA first apron purposes. And they just brought him back on the final 2-way. So unless the Mavericks decide to change up their 2-ways, which those are not guaranteed, so they technically could mix up their 2-ways, the other 2-ways they have, Lawson has the last one. So the Mavericks 2-way spots are locked in. So as of right now, we could see as the preseason keeps going. Obviously, Jazzy Gortman has made an impression. Didn't have as great as a game as he did against Memphis, but still was solid enough tonight. 6 points in 18 minutes on 3 of 6 shooting, 2 assists, just 1 turnover. Emmanuel Miller, who was kind of my favorite to get one of those two-way spots, had a good game 1 against Memphis. Didn't really do much in his 7 minutes tonight, as the Mavericks did play more of their top of the rotation players at this game with Klay, with Kyrie starting, and then they played Lively and Gafford into the third quarter. So there just wasn't as many minutes. Interestingly enough, Utah played a lot of their starters into the third quarter and even the fourth quarter. I think Lauri Markkanen played 29 minutes. Taylor Hendricks played 34. That's about right. Colin Sexton played 26. Jordan Clarkson played 22. So some of their veterans got some minutes tonight. I'm especially surprised that Markkanen played 29 minutes. I can't remember the last time I saw like a big time starter play fourth quarter minutes in a preseason game. That's not like the last preseason game. So maybe the Jazz were using this. Maybe this is their dress rehearsal game, so to speak. Excuse me. But it was interesting to watch them do that. Otherwise, not too much standing out. Quentin Grimes had an uneventful 12 minutes. Kind of just he got up threes in a hurry, made one. Najee Marshall again getting up shots, 2 of 6 in his 18 minutes, struggling from the field, but a big body and showing off his ball handling. I think his dribbling is really going to add a dynamic to this Mavericks offense. It's going to help a lot when you consider how stagnant a lot of the Mavericks role players were last season, despite the upgrades, despite bringing in PJ Washington, Derek Jones Jr., and then the continued development of Kyrie Irving, bringing in Dante Exum. Like, I think Marshall, who's pretty much replacing Derek Jones Jr., that ball handling and dribbling is going to make a difference when the regular season rolls around. Just having another guy that when he catches the ball can confidently attack a closeout and make a pass in a way that a lot of the Mavericks perimeter role players just couldn't do, especially their forwards or guys that were forward size. I think Marshall is going to be really helpful there. And I know his preseason hasn't looked great in terms of his counting stats and the box score and his shooting. I think that's going to be a really good dynamic for the Mavericks. I think he's going to fit in well. Spencer Dinwiddie hasn't looked great in his 2 preseason games, but I don't know how to feel about that. He's a veteran. Glass half full. You just look at what Dinwiddie did in his, about 18 months or so he played in Dallas. And obviously glass half empty is you look at what he did before he came to Dallas and Washington, and then you look at what he did afterwards in Brooklyn and with the Los Angeles Lakers. And really the best, the only time Dinwiddie has played average to above average NBA basketball in the last 5 years has been when he's been in Dallas. So I don't know if Dallas is the magic touch. We haven't really seen it in the preseason so far. He did have a couple nice finishes in the lane, did have 3 assists, 2 turnovers, 10 points in 21 minutes. We'll see. Him and Jaden Hardy are going to be the guards to get those backup minutes with Dante Exum, who it was announced, I think after the last preseason game. I can't remember if we talked about on the pod. He underwent his wrist surgery, so he'll be out for 3 months. So Dinwiddie and Hardy are going to be the ones that probably get the call to fill in that spot for Exum. Hardy, not as clean of a game as he had against Memphis. He did score 12 points, but it was on 3 of 11 shooting. His shot wasn't there. Only had 1 turnover. He had 4 assists, 1 turnover. And not to pick on Jaden Hardy, but I will say that was a little deceiving. He had probably 2 more should-be turnovers, 2 more bad passes that got deflected in the lane, but then the Mavericks were able to recover them. So, his passing wasn't as smooth as I thought it was against Memphis. He had a really bad pass on the fast break that Daniel Gafford was able to clean up and finish with a dunk. It was a 2-on-1 fast break, and he kind of just passed it. Kind of wasn't a clean pass. Tried to pass it to the trailer, and the Jazz almost picked it off, and they were the Mavericks were lucky that they didn't. But yeah, no one really popped off the bench. It just kind of felt like a game to get through, really, with Klay and Kyrie trying to get their feet under them, with this being their first preseason game. Still no Luca Doncic. We're probably not going to see Luca this preseason. I think Jason Kidd said before the game they would love to get him in maybe for the last game but he's definitely not playing in the next preseason game, and they're hoping maybe he can play in the last one. But I wouldn't necessarily count on it. I don't think the odds are too good. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't plan on talking too much because this is a preseason game. There's not much more to talk about. I've already talked for about 16 minutes, so I think we're going to do short and sweet. Even if Kirk was able to get on, I will say this. Not to get too ranty, but part of the reason this podcast was going to be maybe shorter than the Memphis one. One, this game I don't think was as interesting as the Memphis game, and then two, we were somehow in the year 2024, and with all of these entertainment options and streaming options and technology options that we have to watch live sports, this game was technically not available in the Dallas Fort Worth area. This was only broadcasted by the Jazz broadcast team for the Jazz broadcast. The Mavericks broadcast team was not doing this game at all, only radio. And the only way to watch this game was if you had NBA League Pass or illegal streams. And I watched it on a legal stream because I don't have League Pass because I just don't. So that's just crazy to me that there's probably a significant amount of people that wanted to watch this game that were like, once they saw that it wasn't on Mavs.com streaming, wasn't on their TV provider, they're probably like, all right, screw it, because I don't want to, I don't have League Pass or I don't want to watch it on TV. I just thought that was, I feel like that's kind of silly. I know NBA preseason games are not the best watches, to say the least. But it's just kind of crazy that we just don't, there's so much stuff that you can watch live sports. You could watch like D2 college football games on ESPN Plus. You can watch Southland Conference basketball games on ESPN. Like, there are a way to watch a lot of obscure and niche sports and to not see a professional basketball preseason game in your area, in your market it's just weird. You think there would be some sort of solution for that. They got to figure that out. More of a me issue, because I mean, if you're a fan, it's not going to be the worst thing in the world if you had to miss this game. But because of that, Kirk couldn't really watch. He listened to the radio call the second half. So even if both of us were here, it would not have been that much more of an insightful podcast because Kirk wasn't really able to watch, because it's kind of ridiculous though. But otherwise pretty uneventful, snoozy game. I wouldn't be too concerned about the Mavericks being 0-2 in the preseason, especially without Luca. Let's see what they look like in the next game. I would imagine they'll probably ramp up Kyrie and Klay a little bit. I think Jason Kidd said before the game he's hoping to play starters in the second half, in either the next game or the last game. So we'll see. And I think we're going to get that dress rehearsal game coming up pretty soon. So we'll have more to watch. And then we'll see if some of these end of the bench guys can make some noise. But like with AJ Lawson taking the final two-way spot, there might not be much, drama, so to speak, to see how the roster fills out. I mean, that's kind of how it is when you're a finals team and you're a new championship contender. The end of the roster stuff just does not matter as much as it does when you're a rebuilding team that's trying to look for any type of piece or talent and fill out the roster any which way you can. So I think that's going to do it for me. Not going to be able to do a live show. I just don't have the magic touch that Kirk has. I don't have the stamina. Don't have the talent that Kirk has for doing the live show. So I apologize, but just wanted to at least hop on, even with Kirk's technical difficulties, talk about this game. And we'll talk to you next time. This is Josh Bowe for Pod Maverick. Check out MavsMoneyball.com. We've got a lot of news and stuff on the site right now, but we'll have recap stats posts from this game. And we're going to be revving up the site as the preseason continues and we get ready for the regular season. So for Pod Maverick, this is Josh Bowe. Kirk Henderson hopefully will join me on our next podcast after the third preseason game coming up shortly. And we will talk to you guys later. Thanks for joining us tonight. You guys take care.